All right. I'm Trent Dilks, the Legislative Director for the Disabled American Veterans Department of Minnesota, to present the Commander's Task Force, joined by.
Kristy Janigo, the American Legion Department of Minnesota Legislative Chair, and the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers Legislative Chair.
We decided to make this recording and to make it available to give a high-level overview of the legislative agenda for the CTF and for MACVSO, so that those who are interested can find out a little bit more. And if you have any questions after watching this recording, you can always feel free to reach out to either one of us. Our contact information will be posted. To get started, a little bit about the Commander's Task Force, just a brief overview. It was developed to come up with a unified legislative agenda for the veterans in Minnesota. It's the congressionally chartered veteran service organizations here in Minnesota, and they put forward a unanimous legislative agenda. That means is that if any organization has any sort of hesitation about any of the agenda items, one no vote will remove it from the Commander's Task Force. So when we say this one is speaking with one voice, it really means that. A brief overview of the organizations in the Commander's Task Force. This work. Okay. Fun. A brief overview of the organizations within the Commander's Task Force. We've got the American Legion, and serving as chair here in 2025 is Dr. Carl Moon of the American Legion. The VFW with State Commander David Stalin. Disabled American Veterans, Department Commander Othar Martin. Jewish War Veterans of the United States, Department of Minnesota, Stu Mednick. Military Order of the Purple Heart with Department Commander David Bellis. The AMVETS, Department Commander John Flores. Marine Corps League with Department Commandant Andrew McCormick. And Paralyzed Veterans of America, PVA, with President Vicki Garrison. This presentation will be available and a link here on this page. So if you'd like to find out anything more about any of the organizations, feel free to click on this presentation and take a closer look. We're proud to partner with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs and the Minnesota Association of County Veteran Service Officers. While we do work closely with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, it's important to note that we are a separate and independent entity. And so sometimes our priorities and their priorities may not match up perfectly. We all do the best we can for all veterans. We try to work together, but we are an independent organization that is doing our best to serve Minnesota veterans as well. All right, now to the meat of it, the Minnesota Commander's Task Force 2025 legislative priorities. And first step is a big one, a separate Veterans Omnibus Bill. The Veterans Omnibus Bill, we got passed 4 years ago, the first one, so this would be the fourth one. And it was when the legislator looked like they weren't going to get much accomplished. And if I had a crystal ball, I'd look forward and say this is probably going to be a year where they're going to have a hard time getting anything accomplished. We always hear that the rhetoric is veterans issues are nonpartisan issues, and the Veterans Omnibus Bill gives them a real opportunity to go ahead and prove that. And they have in the past. We've had unanimous votes. Votes with just one vote against in the Minnesota House of Representatives. And so it's really something that when we can get veterans issues alone, we find overwhelming support from both sides of the aisles, and it is nonpartisan. The important step is to make sure it stays separate. So we're calling on the Minnesota House, Minnesota Senate, along with the governor's own request to travel alone in a Minnesota Veterans and Military Affairs Omnibus Bill, like has been the precedent now for the last 3 years. Priority number 2, and these are in no specific order. They're just down this way. So it's not a top in the second priority, just priority B is hunting, fishing, and trapping for Minnesota veterans. We've seen over and over that the outdoors and being in the outdoors has healing properties for our veterans. Just the act of being outside. And if that's engaging in hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, whatever it may be, we want to increase the accessibility for those things. We've done it for the state parks in Minnesota. And so people who enjoy the outdoors in that way, veterans who enjoy the outdoors in that way, have seen a great benefit. We'd really like to see that expanded into hunting and fishing areas. We look at other states, Montana, Texas, Colorado, Wisconsin, states that we kind of think of as other outdoor states, and they have a much better benefit for their disabled veterans when it comes to hunting and fishing. So to address this, we've introduced what's called the Minnesota model. It's unique. In Texas, if you go down there from anywhere at 50% service connection, you're going to end up with a free hunting, fishing. You get tags for like 7 deer, 5 turkey, a bunch of fish that I've never heard of. It's an amazing benefit, and it's open to all. We're going a little bit different here with the Minnesota model, and we're leaving in place a $5 fee. The $5 fee ensures that just over $19 right now in the federal excise tax come back to the state of Minnesota. I've talked to a lot of veterans, and I haven't heard one that wasn't willing to give $5 to make sure 19 federal dollars come back to the state of Minnesota, and that money goes to the outdoors. So they're willing to do it. It keeps the fiscal impact of this low. It's not a large a cost to the Minnesota DNR to do this because of the Minnesota model, and the time is right now. Right now, the Minnesota DNR is building in a new licensing system. All of the work's going on to create the new IT system that'll lead to us being able to buy our licenses. If we're able to get this past this session, they will be able to add that in without rebuilding the system, without asking for additional IT money. So we're very cooperative with them. We understand that March 2026 is the rollout of the new system. We're not asking them to create a way to do this for veterans and then recreate it in the new system. We're asking for a delayed kind of approach to this so that when the new system is ready to roll, it's a one-time rollout. It's going to keep the cost down. This will cost much, much more if we have to come back next budgeting year and ask for money to also improve the IT. So if this is a way we'd like to show our appreciation for Minnesota's disabled veterans, now is the time to do it. We're talking about 50% or above, $5 hunting fishing license. What exactly that looks like, we're still working on. This was included in the governor's budget request for MDVA and the DNR. So we're very thankful for his support, and we're looking for some lawmakers that are interested in supporting this as well. No, the other caveat is we are looking at one that wasn't covered in the budget request is the service organizations believe it would be an excellent way for Minnesota to show our gratitude to all veterans who served by allowing out-of-state veterans to purchase Minnesota hunting and fishing license, and open to what that might be, whether that's small game and fishing, whether that's, deer, small game, whatever it may be, but to allow veterans from outside of Minnesota to purchase those at the in-state rate. When they swore to serve their country, they didn't swear to serve just Wisconsin or just New York. They served all of us. And I think it would be a wonderful way to show our appreciation. In talks with the DNR, we're looking at a pretty low fiscal impact. And so it'd be nominal, but it would be a wonderful way to get Minnesota out there, show our appreciation, and let people know they should come hunting and fishing. And while they're here, spend some of their money on restaurants, room and board, things like that. All right, the next one is modernize the disabled veteran market value exclusion. This one has been an issue we've been working on a lot for a long time. And over the years, we've done some good things. We've expanded it to surviving spouses. We've gotten rid of the 8-year limit. We've really made some improvements on it. But what we haven't done in the last 14 years is address the cap. I've been doing this now for 10 years. This is my 10th legislative session representing disabled veterans here in St. Paul. And years ago, it used to be one or two calls out of all of the calls I took were about the amount of the exclusion. And those were kind of the one-offs, right? But as home values have skyrocketed, as we've seen property tax rates and local governments continue to increase their levies and things like this, now I would say it's about 3 out of every 4 calls. These aren't just the one-offs who have a home above the median value. These are people who are struggling to survive, veterans who are struggling to survive, surviving spouses who see about a 55% reduction in their income when their veteran passes away and they move into dependency and indemnity compensation. Their fixed incomes are not keeping up with inflation. And so as they see that and an increased push on their property tax, there are a lot of veterans and surviving spouses worried that they can't keep their homes, that they don't know what to do. So that has pushed us to the forefront. It's gone from kind of a side note to urgent, and we need to address it. We recommend a system that would increase it initially to 200,000 and 400,000. 70% would be at the 200 and then 100% permanent total at the 400,000. And then fixing it to inflation. There's a special number by the Bureau of Statistics that measures local property tax inflation. So it's not just a general inflationary number, it's actually what's happening. But it would allow for this to be fixed one time and for us not to have to keep coming back. I am aware that there are issues with this, especially from some of the greater Minnesota counties. We're not blocking those out. But as I dig into the numbers and as I've worked on this issue for the past decade, the noise being made doesn't match the facts. When you have counties that the median value, home value, is still $100,000 less, so around $200,000 to $220,000, so 100 to 80,000 less than the top of the exclusion. If you talk about increasing the amount of the exclusion, you're talking about a very minimal impact in a property tax shift. The biggest impacts and the most people we're hearing from are in the metro counties, where we've seen the biggest rises in property values and property taxes. And those are also the counties who have at least remained neutral, if not supportive to our efforts. So while we hear a lot from the greater Minnesota and we understand there are struggles there, the facts of it are that there are so few severely disabled veterans who are 100,000 plus over the median home value that would actually increase the shift in those counties. That some of the fear and some of the worries about the shift are much louder than the actual impact would be. And we're working on the numbers to present that in a more kind of conclusive breakdown, especially for our greater Minnesota counties. We'd like to fix some of the language, the surviving spouse language. It was a compromise. I was in the room when it was a compromise, and we didn't do it right. We wanted to do the right thing, and we did for the surviving spouses, but we left in the equal or lesser value language, and that has become a nightmare. Assessors are having to take home values from other counties. They're having to adjust for it, whether there was an amount of time that they're out of the home. It's bad. It's bad administratively. It was bad policy, and I would really like a chance to fix it here in this. We also have to correct some language. There's this thing in there about an honorable discharge, which, the statute leads back to something that goes into the DD 214. And now we have assessors trying to understand what honorable for the means of VA benefits are versus honorable discharge from military service. And there's a bunch of reasons those things wouldn't line up. And so we don't want that. The criteria to get this exclusion is to be compensably rated from the VA between 70 and 100%. That means the VA has already administratively found that you had honorable character of service, eligible for VA benefits, and awarded those. So that work has been done by professionals who all they do is make these determinations. We don't need county assessors retrying that or trying to wade through the process. So it might look weird to strike the word honorable. It's not some shady thing. It's not a mistake. It is just trying to make sure that administratively the paperwork lines up, the eligibility criteria lines up, and we don't have assessors pulling their hair out. And then Kristy, if you'd like to cover the Minnesota Claim Shark bill.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very excited that this is part of the CTF priorities. The Legion also has this as one of their key priorities, as does MACVSO. So this updates the disclosure part of the state statute regarding VA benefit matters. We're asking for a section to be added about VA accreditation. So just for some background, as an assistant county veteran service officer, I didn't go to school for this because you can't. To be able to work on VA benefits as a county veteran service officer in the state, you need to meet the state definition of a veteran. You need to have a DD 214. To get on board with doing this work, I had to take several training classes and fill out some VA forms to be accredited through the 5 organizations that I hold my accreditations with. So this is searchable on the VA Office of General Counsel. You can look me up as a VSO representative and see what organizations I'm accredited for. So it's not like it's a 4-year degree. It's not a law degree. It is a few hours of on-the-job training that we're asking folks to get to be able to display their VA accreditation on the Office of General Counsel. Some things we're noticing with unaccredited parties, they're charging people exorbitant fees to represent them on their VA benefits claims, when in reality you can get this type of support and much more robustly, I might argue, from a county veteran service officer or a government veteran service officer who will never and can never charge you for support with VA benefits claims. So what's happening is these agents will take a veteran's entire back pay from their claim. So let's say they inform the VA informally or formally that they want to submit a claim. They submit an intent to file in January. The claim takes until the next December to grant. Well, a veteran is eligible for back pay during that time because they solidified that effective date with the intent to file. So some of these sharks are taking all of their back pay, which can be tens of thousands of dollars, to sometimes, I don't know what the biggest back pay that you've ever heard of, but I've heard of like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's truly what's at stake here. Some claim sharks, what we're calling them, will take a percentage of the veteran's benefits for life. So we want to avoid these types of situations where a veteran doesn't truly know what they're getting into. We want them to understand the contract they're signing if they do choose to go this route. And we hope that the party will be accredited through the VA.
Excellent. All right, and then for the last priority for the Commander's Task Force agenda is to address food insecurity. When the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs conducted a comprehensive study trying to find out what the needs were in Minnesota of the veterans themselves came back with one of their top concern was food insecurity. And we look at the pressures that are out there in greater Minnesota, metro, different models to fulfill different needs, and more availability is just going to be the key to addressing this. What we're proposing is a $500,000 funding to Lutheran Social Services, LSS, that would deliver high quality, nutritious food and frozen meals directly to the veteran's home using parcel delivery. And so this would look a lot like HelloFresh or those types of things, where you would order the meal. And a big part of this in greater Minnesota is our veterans are proud, and there is a stigma for asking for help. And if you're in a small community, 1,200 people, and you go to the church that has a food pantry every other week on Tuesday, it'll be around town. You know that even well-intentioned, that people will know you needed help. And that becomes a significant barrier. We see veterans who would rather go without a meal than be seen asking for help. This allows them to go to, a county veteran service officer, to some other referral point, and deal with people who understand what's going on and that work specifically with veterans and have helped veterans in tough spots before. It also has the wraparound services. Lutheran Social Services, LSS, has the services to help with budgeting, finance repair, these types of things. Because we don't want to feed veterans forever. We want to get them fed when they need it, get them the wraparound resources. Maybe that's a claim, maybe that's the county veteran service officer. But if this is going to be the access point, we want to have the food available, keep them fed while we find the other services that we can return them to independence. So I think LSS is a wonderful program. This really is meant to lock down on greater Minnesota. The challenges there. If you're without transportation in greater Minnesota, even if you're in small town, making it to the next town over is impossible. And if you're 5 miles out of town, you might as well be on the moon because there's no public transportation. So the ability to have a program that would deliver nutritious food without the stigma, without, a lot of that is just it's the right thing to do for our veterans. And this is a responsible program because it already funded, not additional funding, already funded are all the wraparound services to get our veterans back to that independence that they value. So that is one that we would like to see addressed. For the Commander's Task Force portion of this, that wraps this up. And we'll move into the MACVSO portion. Kristy, if you want to get you to your there it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Kristy Janigo. I'm third generation Army. My granddad served in the Army in Okinawa in World War II, and my uncle was in the Army during the Vietnam era. So like Trent, I'm a global war on terrorism era Army veteran. Um, and that is how you become a county veteran service officer. Again, you can't go to school for it. You do have to have that military service to be able to do this work. So we are a proud organization. The County Veteran Service Officers were established by Minnesota statute in 1943. By 1945, the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs and County Veteran Service Officers came together to form MACVSO. And in 1987, MACVSO was first registered as a nonprofit. And by 2015, it was registered as a 501(c)(4).
No, it's a
Oh,
dumb
it's not a
computer.
touch screen. All right.
No. It's barely a screen.
So the early origins of this organization were veterans themselves who had problems that they were experiencing from war, mainly World War I. And so many folks within our organization today, are also disabled veterans with firsthand experience of what it takes to file a VA benefit claim for themselves and get it granted successfully. So there is a lot of personal commitment to this work. This is a photo of our association from 2021. I believe this is up at Grandview, which would have been our fall event. So MACVSO is governed by an executive board, which is elected each year at this fall event, which is a training event. And we organize training for our members twice a year. So we have plenty of opportunity for continuing education. We meet in the spring and the fall for training. So our mission is to train and educate Minnesota Veteran Service Officers, positively impact legislative decisions, so that's what I do for them, and establish, maintain, or enhance relationships with stakeholders. Our vision is to be the premier support association for our 87 Minnesota County Veteran Service Officers and staff. And you can find us at macvso.org. A little plug for this is the CVSO Finder tab. So you can look any of us up by county. You can also look us up by name. So that you can find out who your county veteran service officer is, and I hope you'll take advantage of that. Okay, so more of the things that we provide. I mentioned the training, the legislative advocacy, educating our new people. So onboarding in this field, it can be very difficult because it is all on the job training. So MACVSO makes sure that happens. And it has a lot of partnerships, again, with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs and at the national level, the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers. And we also assist our membership in wellness and resiliency. There is a tremendous amount of secondary trauma that comes from doing this work because you are there to hear the veteran stories and retell it in such a way that it ends up with a successfully granted federal VA disability compensation claim or state benefits if that's what the issue is you're pursuing. So we hear a lot of sad stories, a lot of devastating stories, some of which we can relate with maybe a little bit too personally. So we do try to train our people to be resilient. And we also provide technical assistance to our county veteran service officers across the state. And that is actually one of our legislative asks this year. So I'll get a little more into that later. So MACVSO, let me just touch on our national entity. So most of us members of MACVSO also belong to the national entity. It was formed in 1991. 36 states in the union have county veteran service officers. Where they don't have those, they might have state veteran service officers. Our national entity provides standardized training, and also they have their own national legislative platform, which they will lobby in DC. So kind of a fun story. The national leadership is one of our own. Chris Hinton is out of Waseca County. He's the CVSO there, and he's the current MACVSO president. So we're very proud to call him our own. All right, so I think we touched on the veteran status in order to be a CVSO. So this picture is me working at the state fair booth this past summer, along with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. We love our outreach opportunities to get the word out about our services. Okay, I think we went over that already. So CVSO's bread and butter really is, I would say, the federal disability compensation claims through the Veteran Benefits Administration. We do a little bit with initial eligibility in the Veterans Health Administration. We may advocate for a veteran through the VA Patient Advocates Office for their healthcare needs. And also, we do have some involvement with National Cemetery Administration when a veteran needs to be buried at a national cemetery, or they need certain things to make their burial possible at a private cemetery. So we do work all those benefits, and we also work state benefits through the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs, and have very close relationships with our nonprofit partners. Every third Saturday, Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans, and all of the organizations that Trent mentioned earlier that belong to the Commander's Task Force. Many of those organizations do provide funding, and so we help to kind of be a hub or a broker of those services to our veterans. Some of the other things we do, networking, I just mentioned, is a big one. Sometimes we participate in or even organize through our county offices stand downs or veteran resources fairs. I know here in the Twin Cities, I just participated in the Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans Winter Salute, which took place at Target Field. It was a lot of fun, hundreds of veteran service providers there. The veterans could get free haircuts, they got a full holiday meal, and they could stop by any of our booths to connect with services. I know we took cases right on the spot, answered questions, and helped veterans troubleshoot their issues. At times, we also appear on the media. So our president has been on Minnesota Military Radio. That's a place where Trent often is, and I've been on Minnesota Military Radio actually with Trent myself. We also participate in reintegrations, mainly at Fort Lewis and Fort McCoy, but some of our people, I know a colleague in my office does travel other places across the country to help demobilizing troops readjust back to civilian life. We also provide mentoring and counseling, some advice, focused on their VA benefit matters. And we also provide referrals to other folks who can help if we're not able to provide the service ourselves. Okay, I think we went over most of that. Now getting into the legislative platform. So MACVSO does share a lot of priorities with the Commander's Task Force. We support those. I just want to mention the Claim Sharks bill that we went over about the accreditation piece. That is part of the governor's budget package. There isn't much, if any, of a fiscal impact that we're aware of, other than maybe some enforcement activities that the AG might do. But it is in there, and we're grateful for the support from the governor and the agency. One shared priority that MACVSO has with the American Legion Department of Minnesota is to eliminate the vehicle registration fees for Gold Star spouses. Gold Star spouses, again, are spouses who have literally lost someone in the line of duty. And so we'd like to see those fees eliminated in the same manner that they've been eliminated recently for 100% permanent and total veterans. We do have several unique priorities for MACVSO, and I'll go over these now in the coming slides. A couple of the last two are a bit more technical in nature, what I have heard some lawmakers call boring bills. So we'll touch on those as well because they are important, even though they're boring. The first one is funding for technical assistance coordinators. So I'm introducing you by picture the three technical assistance coordinators that exist in our organization. I'm the TAC for Justice Involved Veterans, meaning I have a lot of expertise in that space because I work for the oldest and largest veterans treatment court in the state. So the 4th District Veterans Treatment Court, it's the Hennepin County Veterans Treatment Court, in existence since 2010. Our veteran population in the court tends to be anywhere between 60 and 80 at any given time. We are really a lot larger than other courts for veterans treatment courts. And so I've gained a lot of experience in a short amount of time that I really want to share with other courts and counties across the state. Tom Anderson out of Winona County is our suicide prevention TAC, and Jenna Schmidtke is our women veterans TAC out of Faribault County. There are a lot of really unique veterans issues in the women's space that need to be treated with special attention going forward. So we're asking for an update to our grant that goes to MACVSO, which is currently $100,000 a year. We're asking that to be increased by $60,000 a year to provide $20,000 to each of the three TACs that I just mentioned. The funding would be to get us some national training and also to provide funding for us to be able to travel across the state to provide that technical assistance to the counties that need it. This is a unique priority to MACVSO. It's not shared by the other groups that we mentioned. It's a state offset for property tax benefit. Essentially, MACVSO wants the state to defray some of the costs of the disabled veterans market value exclusion by providing 25 cents on the dollar to reimburse counties to administer this benefit. Now on to the boring bills, data sharing between county veteran service officers and the assessor's office. Some of our county veteran service officers have encountered cases where an assessor's office would refuse to share data. Well, it's hard for a county veteran service officer to advocate for a veteran on a property tax issue or a veteran benefits issue if they don't have access to the data. So I'm told that within the assessor's chapter of state law, there is a provision for allowing communication both ways. So this would be to add it to our chapter. So the chapter that governs county veteran service officers is chapter 197 of state statute, and we're looking to add the language in red and underline to make sure that communication is both ways. We use may language so that it's permissive. It does not say shall, but it's just another tool to give our folks latitude to advocate. The last boring bill is to strike the 4 words in this area here, so in red and strike out. Essentially, right now, if you read the law literally, it kind of states that a person who is charged an unlawful fee from a government service officer could be responsible for a misdemeanor. We think that's not really in the spirit of the law, so we would propose to just strike these 4 words so that a person who is unintentionally or been taken advantage of is not then guilty of a misdemeanor. So that's my contact information, and I'm sure Trent and I will be available. You can find us pretty easily online.
Yep.
And thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.